Hello and welcome to another episode of my 1997 review series, and this time I'm going to be talking about WWF's In Your House Ground Zero, which I believe was the 16th in the series of the In Your House pay-per-views, but I'm not too sure because by this time they stopped using the numbers. They started just giving them taglines and just calling them that, so I believe this was the 16th, but either way, this is In Your House Ground Zero. A bit of backstory before I get into the card. This was right around the time when the WWE were just kicking off with the Attitude Era. They're finally getting the ball rolling on a lot of new concepts. For example, the concept of the hometown boy, and what I mean by that is at this time they'd started building up the Hart Foundation to be heels in America, but faces everywhere else, because they had Bulldog, who was English, and they had Bret Hart obviously and Owen Hart, who were Canadian, so they were sort of taking them to Canada a lot. They do Raws in America and they do the next one in Canada, and they keep going back and forth between the two countries to sort of show the differences between the fans and show that Bret Hart isn't a heel, because if they continue to just do Raws in America, for example, then the fans watching at home would just keep seeing these American fans booing Bret Hart, and then he would have become a heel everywhere else, because we'd be sat at home thinking, oh, this guy sucks, he just keeps complaining all the time. But because they kept on taking Raw to Canada and showing us him in his own environment, and not even just Raw, the pay-per-views they did, Canadian Stampede, which I've also reviewed on this channel. If you want to go back and watch that, you can do. Yeah, because they kept on going back and forth, it did show that Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation were so well liked in their own places, so it gave us a real good balance, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to articulate this correctly, but I'm failing at it. I'm not doing it justice. But yeah, basically we're going back and forth to sort of show that Bret Hart is a really respected face in one place and a really hated villain in another. Well, let's get straight into the card now. First match was Brian Pillman versus Goldust. Now the winner of this, well, the winner of this match, Marlena was with Goldust at the time, but if Brian Pillman won, he did get control of Marlena for 30 days. Previously, Goldust had beaten Brian Pillman on a previous pay-per-view, and that meant that Brian Pillman had to wear a dress until he won. I think by this point he'd stopped wearing the dresses and he'd beaten somebody, so he'd stopped wearing them, but now he wanted control of Marlena, and it was really interesting because in real life Marlena was married to Goldust, but also in real life, back in the early 90s, so about 5 years before this, Marlena was sort of going out with Brian Pillman apparently, so there is the real life history there between the two. And one thing I've noticed from watching these old Raws is that they were really plugging the WWE hotline, and JR on the hotline, and maybe Jim Cornette was on the hotline as well. Actually, I'm not too sure if Connie was or not, but I remember JR was, and they would continue, and Sonny was as well, and they would continue plugging it, saying, right, ring this number, it will cost you money, but you're going to find out interesting information. And like JR would be like, oh, I've got some interesting information about the past of Marlena and Brian Pillman, and these are the things he probably would have been talking about on the Superstar hotline. That they didn't really give away these things on Raw specifically, but now we've managed to see this, like, obviously this is 14 years later, in the year 2011, being able to look back with the benefit of internet and stuff, we can find these things out, especially through shoot interviews and stuff like that. So Marlena had been with Brian Pillman before, so the thought of, in a storyline, this guy gets to take his real life ex-girlfriend for 30 days, that makes things a lot more interesting. And if I'm Goldust, I'm feeling very unsure about this. Like, wait a minute, why would I want to, in storyline, even give my wife away back to her real life ex-boyfriend? That doesn't really make sense to me. But WWE was sort of playing with the boundaries here a little bit. And yeah, Brian Pillman did get the win. I think Marlena had a brick in her purse, and she went to hit Pillman with it, or hand it to Goldust so he could hit Pillman with it, but Pillman ended up getting control, hitting Goldust with it and getting the pin, so now he gets control of Marlena for 30 days. Next up we got Brian Christopher versus Scott Putski. Now, again, another thing that was happening at the time was they were trying to build up the cruiserweight division, or sorry, the light heavyweight division in the WWF. They were bringing in lighter guys from all over the place and featuring them on Raw to try and show, like, right, we're going to push this division, we're going to make this division look good. But for me, looking back on it, these guys all just look like jobbers, because they didn't go on to do anything, most of them. In this match, you got Brian Christopher, who turned out to be Grandmaster Sexay, as we all know, who's Jerry the King Lawler's son. But in the storyline, they continually, JR would hint towards it saying, oh, this kid's your son, but Jerry Lawler would adamantly deny it all the time, like saying, "Oh, he's not my son. Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying that? He's not my son. Why don't you say he's McMahon's son or something? He's not mine." And it was a part of the storyline. It was sort of like a childish back and forth, which is entertaining, but apparently this also has deep-rooted. This is a deep-rooted issue within the relationship between Jerry Lawler and Brian Christopher. That Jerry Lawler didn't want Brian Christopher telling people he was basically his son, because apparently so anyway, he wanted him to get over on his own name and for his own sake, and not because he's Jerry Lawler's son. Whereas apparently Brian Christopher thought that Jerry Lawler was sort of doing it so that Brian Christopher didn't embarrass Jerry Lawler, which is a bit ridiculous. He's his son, he can't really embarrass him. Even if he's not as good wrestler as his dad, he's not going to embarrass him, is he? But yeah, either way, this is Brian Christopher versus Scott Putski, and Scott Putski's dad was Ivan Putski. So Ivan Putski had a few cameos, and I think they had a tag team match and all, but Ivan Putski seemed like a lot older than Jerry Lawler. But yeah, what can I say about this match? This match, actually, let me go back to the last match, Pillman versus Goldust. That was a pretty decent match, but now back into this one, Christopher versus Putski. Rubbish match. It only lasted 4 minutes 40 seconds here according to Wikipedia, and the match ended when Putski got injured on the outside. Now, if you to look at him, he just looks like a bodybuilder with no athletic skill whatsoever. And then when he got in the ring, he didn't really have much athletic skill. So I'm sort of glad that he didn't go over in this feud, and I'm also sort of glad that he got injured in this match. Not because he got injured, but because the fact that maybe if he didn't, he would have won this match and he would have gone on to be like the focal point of that light heavyweight division, which ended up being Brian Christopher's role. So I don't know if Brian Christopher was penciled in to be that role, like always, or if circumstances after this match helped him become that. But either way, I'm making little sense here probably, but yeah, Brian Christopher got the win over Scott Putski in a shit match. Next up we had a triple threat match. Now this triple threat match I was really interested to see, because it was Savio Vega versus Crush versus Farouk. In the storyline, all three of these guys had been a part of the Nation of Domination until Farouk fired both Crush and Savio Vega. Savio Vega went on to form the Los Boricuas, and then Crush went on to form the DOA. One thing I noticed from the fans, that the fans absolutely loved DOA, and I personally took it as a race issue. Now, other fans may not have seen it like that, but I personally did, because I didn't think the DOA were any good. In ring, they were all average at best. The only thing they had going for them is their gimmick was they were bikers, right? Which isn't a fantastic gimmick anyway. So all they were doing is just riding down to the ring. Now you had the Boricuas, who had Savio Vega, who I think was a very good talent in the ring, and they had a few other guys who were okay. They were, again, all at least average, all around average. But they had Savio Vega, one really good standout. And then you had the Nation of Domination, who had guys like who were all at least average and better than average, I think. Better workers. You had Farouk, who was a good worker. You had at the time Karma, maybe D'Lo Brown, and The Rock ended up joining around this time, I think. But yeah, so the fans were really behind the Crush's team, and I don't know why, because none of them were really booked as like faces or anything. I did take it as a race issue. The reasons why the fans were backing the DOA is because it was the whites versus the Hispanics versus the blacks, and they all wanted the whites to win. Come on, whites, sort of thing. And it sort of like ruined it for me a bit, because I was like, I don't want these guys to be the heels because they're not white. I don't want to be booing Farouk and Savio Vega for the sole reason that they're not white. I was personally behind Farouk in this because I don't know, I just preferred his group as a whole. But yeah, in the end, Savio Vega ended up getting the win. I think it was a decent match. I think it ended up being a massive like schmoz where like loads of guys got involved and stuff, but I don't really remember. Next up we had Max Mini versus El Torito, which was actually a pretty good match. It was a minis match, obviously not going to be a 5-star classic, but I remember at one point one of the little guys, I think it was El Torito, ended up running around the ring and ended up jumping on Jerry Lawler's lap and started like took the crown off his head and put it on his own head, which was pretty funny. But yeah, nothing much to say about the match. Max Mini beat El Torito, and again at the time this was another thing that WWE were trying to do. They're trying to push the boundaries, trying to get the minis involved, trying to see if it catches on, because WCW at the time were slaughtering WWF. They had Goldberg coming on, they had the NWO, they had the Cruiserweights, they had all this good action, and WWF were just really struggling to keep up. As good as the main event scene was, they didn't have great undercard that WCW had. WCW had the great undercard whereas the WWF had the great main event scene going on. So if you had that balance, if that cruiserweight division had been in the WWF, they would have been far better off. That would have been the perfect company in my opinion. And also throwing the NWO storyline in there would have been brilliant. But yeah, that was that match. Then we had a 4-way elimination WWF Tag Team title match, where it was Legion of Doom versus the Godwins versus Owen Hart and the Bulldog versus the Headbangers. Now the Headbangers ended up winning this match. It went for about 20 minutes, 17 minutes it says here on Wikipedia. But this is a continuation of the Legion of Doom versus the Godwins feud, because a couple of months ago the Legion of Doom had broke Henry Godwin's neck. So since the Godwins had been coming down and attacking the Legion of Doom with like sick buckets and that sort of stuff, and the sick buckets ended up getting involved in the match, and then both teams ended up getting thrown out, and then the Headbangers ended up getting the win over Owen Hart and the Bulldog when Austin came down, having had his neck also broken by Owen Hart. So very interesting in how in this match broken necks, like the storylines all circled around broken necks. Austin came down, stunned Owen Hart, and then one of the Headbangers, I think it was Thrasher, got the pin on him, and then they ended up getting the tag team titles, which, again, looking back, I never remember the Headbangers holding their tag team titles, which is quite strange. I don't remember that. I think I actually never saw this pay-per-view back then, to be honest, as well. I remember the first match, the Brian Pillman Goldust one, but apart from that, I don't really remember anything out of it. Next up, the WWF title match, the Patriot Del Wilkes going up against Bret the Hitman Hart for the WWF Championship. Now this was a strange match because it was for the WWF title, but it wasn't the main event. It went on before the main event. I thought that's a bit strange. Even though it's in your house, the WWF title should always go on top. That's why at the moment things are always a bit stupid, because you've got a world title and a WWF title, you don't know which one should go on top. It should always be the WWF title. Always, the WWF title is always your main draw. That goes on top in my opinion, no matter what. Even if you got Rock and Hulk versus Hogan on your card, you put that below your world title match. Anyway, Bret Hart versus the Patriot. One thing I'll say about the Patriot is that I'm really surprised he didn't go further than he did in the WWF, because he had a great look and a great gimmick. As cheesy as it would be today for a guy to come in wearing a mask and then talking all about, oh, America's so great, America's so great. At the time, that was like, that was a sentiment that the fans really wanted, because they hated the Hart Foundation. Remember, like I said at the start of the video, they hated the Hart Foundation. And like I said in the Savio Vega Crush Farouk match, they hated Farouk and Savio Vega, and they really got behind Crush because he was white, and that's my opinion. Feel free if you disagree with why fans like why fans liked Crush in that match. If you disagree with what I'm saying, let me know in the description box. So if you agree, let me know down there as well. But yeah, this is a really and I won't say racism, but this was like a really patriotic time in the WWF, and they really wanted to get behind their American heroes, and not in the cheesy way of Hulk Hogan, like eat your vitamins, say your prayers. But when the Patriot came in, because at the time they were kicking off this Attitude Era and no one else was really that gimmicky, he could come in with this massive gimmick, and it didn't really seem as cheesy as it would do if there were a load of gimmicks, and it just would have been like, oh, there's just a generic good guy. But this guy was so good. He was just the pure meaning of goodness sort of thing. I can't really get the word out. I'm still on the tip of my tongue, but I can't really think of it. Can't really get it out even. But yeah, the Patriot the fans are so behind him, and like, he's such a great character, and I think he could have gone a lot further until I watched this match. I watched this match and it went for 90 minutes 20 seconds according to Wikipedia, and it was painful. Bret Hart did get an okay match out of him, but Del Wilkes was so bad at selling. So bad at selling. For a guy who wears a mask, it already takes away a bit of your selling, because you sell with your face, so it takes away the face. But it also makes it a bit easier, because all he needs to do is sell his body and like grabbing himself like, oh, he just hurt me sort of thing. But he wasn't doing it. Like, he's just leaving himself open for Bret Hart to keep kicking him in the chest like this, keep kicking him. And he's just like that, like sort of like not really selling it enough, and it really took away from it. Nutty Rochik just did a video about which was a reply to the British Fist. I recommend you go check both those channels out, where she talks about what 10 things go into making a 5-star match, and she talked about selling, and how selling, if people aren't selling properly, it can take away from the match. And in this one, it really did take away from the match. So the Patriot for me didn't sell enough. Bret Hart tried to get the best out of him, and he did get a passable match, but anyone else against the Patriot, and you're not getting a great match, and that's probably why the Patriot didn't last so long. And at the end, and in hindsight, looking back, the Patriot probably knew he was really limited, but they probably thought, do you know what? We're only going to bring him in for this one reason. We want to bring him in because he's this American hero, and we want him to go up against this anti-American bad guy. Have the anti-American bad guy beat him to make him look even stronger. Then we can just get rid of the Patriot. He can go away. We'll never have to see him ever again. And I do believe that that's what actually happened with him in the end. And yeah, Bret Hart ended up getting the win, obviously, keeping his WWF title, which he would then go on to keep for a while. Well, not too long of a while, but you all know what happened there. Anyway, main event time: Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Now, you're probably expecting me with these two guys to talk about how awesome this match is and how much I enjoyed it, and because it was the height of the Attitude Era and things were really kicking off at this time, how I really enjoyed it. But I can't, because I'm not going to lie, this was rubbish. I really did not enjoy this match, and I'll tell you why. The ring work wasn't that bad, but the story they were telling throughout the match was just stupid, because there's multiple ref bumps, and then there was times when, like, Shawn Michaels would revive Earl Hebner. He'd revive him and then knock him straight back out again. And I sort of understood it in the storyline, because what he would do is he'd revive him and be like, right, come on, come and count, and then Earl would count 1, 2, and then Undertaker would kick out, and then Michaels would be like, oh shit, I need to cheat again. I'm going to knock the referee out so I can cheat while he's down, and then I'll just revive him again, and then he can make the pin. But then Undertaker started doing it as well, and when Undertaker started doing it, when both guys are doing the same thing, it didn't make sense. Because from Shawn Michaels' perspective as the heel, because I do believe that this is the time this was basically the time when he just turned heel. This may have been the match, in fact, that like solidified Shawn Michaels as a heel, and also it solidified DX as a group, because he'd teamed up with Triple H a few weeks ago, but they'd never really given themselves a name or anything, or hinted that they were going to stay together as a team or anything like that. But then, for some reason in this match, Triple H and Chyna both came down to help him out, so did Rick Rude, and yeah, they were all beating on The Undertaker. But then The Undertaker started hitting the referee as well, and it's sort of like, why would The Undertaker hit the referee? Because now he's allowing himself to be beaten 4-on-1. So yeah, it was a bit stupid. And then at one point he was super kicked into the ropes, and he did the Andre the Giant spot where he dangles his arms up and he's like, oh shit, I'm stuck. And then Michaels gets a chair, and not after too long, Undertaker gets up like he was never super kicked, gets the chair, and gets his own back, sort of thing. But yeah, I ended up in a no contest, and I really did not enjoy this main event. Altogether, this card, it was alright. It was nothing special, but one of my favourite pay-per-views of all time is coming up next, and I've not seen it probably since it happened, since around the year that it happened. I probably continued watching it continually for about a year, and then someone taped over the tape, so then I never saw it again. And I've probably not seen it since then, but the next pay-per-view, actually no, the next pay-per-view is One Night Only. Well, the next one after that, the next In Your House pay-per-view, the next proper American pay-per-view is Bad Blood, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing that. Some of you might know what happens on Bad Blood. If you do know, stay tuned for that video, because I do really want to get it done really quickly and so get it up. But then again, I'm not going to be around for the next 2 weeks, so I probably will not be uploading any videos in that time. So this video is probably going to be my last for about 2 weeks. So yeah, when I do come back, I'll have loads of videos done, because hopefully me and Amy are going to get a few more videos done, a few more idiot reviews. I don't think I'll do a Q&A with her. I'll do a Q&A myself though. Might get 2 or 3 more idiot reviews from her done, so I can upload them sporadically. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'd like to know your thoughts on this pay-per-view. If you've seen it before, let me know what you thought of it down here. If you've not seen it before, I don't really recommend you going and checking it out, to be honest. The Marlena Brian Pillman storyline is very interesting, and that's probably his last ever proper pay-per-view match from Brian Pillman, because he ended up dying sadly the morning of Bad Blood. Yeah, that's quite sad actually now I think about it. But yeah, thank you for watching. Please subscribe up above if you do like my videos, and yeah, I like to encourage people commenting down below, because I do reply to all my comments and I like to get conversation started or whatever. And rate down below, dislike or like, whatever. I don't really mind, I'm quite easy. And yeah, thanks for watching again. See you later.